So if you don't know, my name's Andy Aquino. I'm with the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library. I am one of the lead census people with the library, and I have teamed up in the past with with a census specialist to go ahead and present similar types of programs that we're presenting today live. So we, Russell and I, who hopefully will be on here in a few minutes, are the people who go ahead and we went to branches and different public organizations and made presentations about the census, why it's important to take the census, how you can take the census, how the library is involved in the census. So we did those types of presentations in the past. What we're going to go ahead and do today is talk about the updates to the census. So since the quarantine has started, we're going to go ahead and have Russell give us an update on all that. And I think Russell just came in, so let me just admit him in. And we'll have Russell give us updates, and then we'll show you a few other sites on the website to go ahead and that might pique your interest. Russell, are you there?
Yes, I am.
All right, thanks for joining us. Joining us now is Russell Davidson. I've started the meeting already, just briefly, Russell. Russell's a partnership specialist with the census. He's one of our area partnership specialists. So what I'm going to do here is pull up a PowerPoint presentation that Russell has shared with me, and we'll go through that, and he'll present the information. So just give me a second to go ahead and grab that screen. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing the spreadsheet on here. I'm just going to put it into slideshow presentation here. And then once that's updated, there we go. Russell, can you take it away?
Sure, yes. Hello, everyone. So I'm Russell. I'm a partnership specialist with the Census Bureau. And I'll just run through this presentation here, and a few of the key things we want you to understand from this is that the census is important, it's safe, and it's easy. And hopefully as we go through this, you'll have much more comfort and understanding around those three aspects. So the U.S. Census Bureau is the largest statistical agency in the U.S. It's the leading source of quality data for the nation. Most people, when they think of the U.S. Census Bureau, automatically think of the decennial census, the 10-year, which we're in right now. But like you see here, the Census Bureau actually conducts over 130 different surveys. And so this is ongoing throughout the year, every year. There's multiple things in the field. Sometimes at one time, they have multiple surveys going on. So listed here are some of the most common ones, some of the most well-known. And some of the bigger ones are our economic program, like the economic census and the census of government, which happen every 5 years in years ending in 2 and 7. So you may not know it, but you may be in a Census Bureau survey already. You may be receiving other information in the mail for participation in some of the other programs that are not necessarily this decennial census. Again, the largest one that we do, the only one that canvasses the entire country, is the decennial census. But with all of these different things in the field and all of these different opportunities, if you suspect that something may not be right and someone's asking you questions that seem inappropriate, so again, some of these other surveys go a little deeper. They have far more questions, far more probing. So it may be a census survey, but not the census survey. So if you suspect fraud, if you suspect something's wrong, go ahead and report it. And tell the person to come back once everything is cleared. And these are the various channels that you can go through to figure out if what you're going through is actually a proper census survey. So the goal of the decennial census is to count everyone once, only once, and in the right place. Every census has its own difficulties. Obviously we're dealing with something now that was completely unexpected and nobody prepared for, but some of the issues leading up to this that we knew we had to overcome and were prepared for was the fact that our population is increasing rapidly, and not only increasing but diversifying. The original census there were just over 3 million citizens at the time, and this census is expected to be well over 330 million. There's over 140 million housing units in the country now. And in order to prepare for the Census Bureau actually has to go out and verify all the addresses. And as you can imagine, when you think about the entire country, there's a lot of address changes that happen in a 10-year period, as far as new builds and demolition and changes to street names. And there's a lot that goes on. And the census, in order to properly count everyone once, only once, and in the right place, needs to ensure that we're contacting people in the right place. So there's a lot of work that goes into just verifying addresses every 10 years. So as you may know, the census is mentioned in the Constitution. It's right there in Article 1, Section 2. It mandates that it needs to be conducted every 10 years in the year ending in 0, and that has been ongoing since 1790. Thomas Jefferson was the director, oversaw the first census. And the reason why it's in Article 1, Section 2 right up front is because representation is based on the results of the census. That's the main reason why the US government conducts the census. Now, as time has gone on, there's a lot more that hinges on the census and the numbers we come up with, but ultimately the original plan, the original reason for the census was to assist the government, you guide the government in divvying up representation throughout the states. So again, the census is important, and like I said right off the bat, first and foremost, it determines the number of seats each state has in the U.S. House of Representatives. It determines the size of each district and how many go to each state. Ultimately, that includes the Electoral College as well. And, a lot of power and a lot of decision making goes into these representational numbers. So along with that, it defines congressional and state legislative districts. But then also, as you work your way down the governmental structure in the US, this information is also used to establish town lines, school districts, voting precincts, all the decision-making processes, all the votings at different levels. Those representations, those districts, those numbers are determined by census numbers. And now some of the even more important aspects of the census today is that these numbers are used to help distribute the discretionary funding of the U.S. budget, which amounts to $675 billion. And here's a quick list of some of the main federal programs that are used. The federal funding is determined by these census numbers. This information also provides insights to government and businesses, and a lot of decision making can be driven by these numbers. To understand that it's safe, the key thing to realize here is that private information is never published. This includes names, addresses, social security numbers, telephone numbers. The Census Bureau, for the decennial census, a lot of this information like security numbers and telephone numbers are not even requested. In some of our other surveys, they are. But that information is never used, never published, never provided to any agency outside of the US Census Bureau even. The Census Bureau collects information in order to provide aggregate statistics. The personal information, again, cannot be used by any other government agency or court or anything outside the Census Bureau. And the Census Bureau just uses it to provide these, aggregate statistics, the numbers within a town, on a street, whatever it may be. U.S. Census Bureau employees are sworn to protect the confidentiality of this data, and this is under Title 13 of the U.S. Code. It's a federal crime to share any of this information. Again, it's a federal crime to share any of this information, even with other federal agencies. Even the U.S. Census Bureau is in the U.S. Department of Commerce. It cannot be shared with other organizations within the U.S. Department of Commerce. It cannot be shared with any other agencies or organizations under the executive branch or in the legislative branch. Any violation of this faces a potential of up to 5 years in prison and $250,000 in fines. New to the 2020 census for the first time, people can respond to the census online, which means you can also use smartphones, personal devices, iPad, iPods, whatever it may be, however you want to access the internet, you can now use those devices to respond to the U.S. Census. And still, we do have the traditional forms of responding by phone and responding by paper. And once things settle down and things get back to whatever the new normal may be, we will have people visiting respondents' doors as well. We'll have enumerators out in the field. So you can see on the side here, this is what a census questionnaire looks like, and it's only asking these few things here: your name, age, date of birth. It doesn't probe very deeply. The U.S. Census will never ask your social security number. It will never ask about money or donations that you make. Certainly, it will not do anything involved with a political party or have any sort of connection to a political party in any way. Nothing about your bank cards, credit cards, anything like that will ever be asked for this. So, like I said before, one of the key provisions, one of the key issues we know that we had to deal with going into the 2020 census, and it has been an issue for a number of decades now, is the growing diversity of our population. And so in response to that, we have language support now in 12 non-English languages. And these 12 languages represented here make up 99% of the population. Between English speakers and these 12 languages, this hits 99% of the population. And this includes online support, phone support, mail. We have a lot of advertisings that are in diversity of languages too. So there's a lot of support to get to as much of the population as possible, covering these 12 languages. So again, you can use any of these different phone numbers for the language of choice, whatever you're most comfortable with. And these are the numbers to access it. This is how you would do this. These phone lines opened back in March, back on March 9th. And so they've been running 24/7 ever since then. And so beyond these 12 languages, we also have a total of 59 non-English languages where there's other assistance like language guides, things in print, glossaries, other supports to assist with taking the census. So those 12 languages that we had listed before, you could get the census in those languages and you can speak to representatives in those languages. These other languages that round out the 59, there's other assistance like print and video, not direct listing of the questionnaire, but there's other support that can be had through these. And then once we get through these 59 languages, now we're talking somewhere around 99.99% of the population is covered by this. So, as we all know, things have changed. So the census, the questionnaires, people receiving notification of how to access the online census questionnaire, that started on May 12th and was originally scheduled to run through July 31st. The Census Bureau has asked Congress for a 3-month extension in all of its work, which would push that deadline back to October 31st. Given the situation and what's going on, Congress hasn't acted on this yet, but the expectation is that once Congress is able to, they will get back to this. The expectation is that a 3-month extension or some level of extension will be provided. But again, the online, the phone, mailing responses continues that sort of data collection. We just can't go out with our enumerators right now and knock on doors. And a lot of the strategies that we had that involved, in-person events and meetings and things like that to help bolster these response rates cannot happen now either. So the data that the census collects, again, not just through the decennial census, but in general with all the other surveys that they conduct, is used to create these statistics, and then these statistics are used by the Census Bureau and by other agencies in the U.S. government to develop the picture of the socioeconomic, race diversity, literacy, all of that information throughout the entire country. And so with that, the Census Bureau has developed this website called ROAM, the Response Outreach Area Mapper. And the original intent of ROAM is to develop census tract by census tract what were expected to be the response rates of each of these, the self-response rates of each of these census tracts. And so as a partnership specialist, this helps us to strategize what segments of the community we really needed to focus on, where we needed to develop relationships, where we needed to really work to help promote the census and bolster these responses. So that's the main purpose of this. But as you can see, this is a census tract in Kings County. It provides a whole wealth of information on a specific segment of a neighborhood, just a census tract. And so you can see that this includes information like literacy rates, computer rate, access to the internet and broadband, smartphones, housing units, all sorts of socioeconomic indicators, economic, and even beyond that as well. So this information could be very valuable for numerous institutions, nonprofits, businesses, and this is all accessible to the general public online. This is how you would get to it, but if you were just to Google search the ROAM census response rate, you would find that. And now this is a similar thing. This is now the self-response rate map. It's a tracker. This is updated daily on what the actual response rates are by census tract. And so we can go in and see how well, and again, we can use this real-time information to develop very strategic, targeted marketing, strategic communications to communities where we know that community, that neighborhood, that census tract is lagging behind in their response, and hope to bolster that. Again, right now, because of the CDC guidelines, most of this has to happen in a virtual space. But once things return to a more public outreach type of opportunity, then we'll be able to have people knocking on doors again. We'll have events in the community again. And this helps us to really strategically target where we need to focus those efforts. So along with that, we're still recruiting for many of these positions. Some of them are on hold, some of them are ongoing, some virtual training is happening, but regardless, we are still hiring, especially for enumerators, but there are other administrative positions as well. And in our area, these positions pay upwards of $20 per hour, plus reimbursement for travel expenses. So if you have to drive around a neighborhood or drive to another town, you know, all of that is paid at the IRS mileage rates as well, in addition to your $20 an hour. So like I said, a lot of that information roam, and there's much more information that the Census Bureau collects, data, aggregate statistics. That's all accessible to you, the public, these organizations, the library, various institutions, whoever it may be. This data is publicly accessible, and so you can you know, search for some of it through the census website. You can just do Google searches for it, but we also have opportunities where some census employees will teach you about the data that you can have access to, and how you might be able to use this to you know, assist business decisions, use it for grant writing purposes, for nonprofits, whatever it may be. And so again, you know, given the current situation makes it all the more important, but even prior to the current situation, the Census Bureau had a presence in social media, and that social media presence is really important today for really getting the word out about the U.S. Census. So if you're interested, you can connect with us on any of these various social media outlets. And if you want more information on the partnership program, or would like to get in touch with a partner, or if you want to learn more about the data and how you can get access to it, these are the this is the contact information.
Great,
So,
Russell.
thank you.
Thank
Does
you
anyone
for
have any
presenting.
questions?
Yeah, we're going to go to questions here in a minute. If you have a question, go ahead and put it through the chat, and I'll relay that on. What I want to do really briefly before we start taking questions is I'm going to go ahead and just go onto the census website just to show you a few of the things that Russell was talking about. So let me switch my screen here. If you just give me a moment. Which is 2020census.gov. And what's kind of neat about the census website is that you can go ahead and when you get onto the site, they have, I think they did a really good job with being able to just setting it up and being able to easily find information on here. So mainly that's up in the three areas up here: privacy and security. Russell talked about avoiding scams and things like that. You can find out information about that there. This here a little bit. Yeah, and then why your answers matter, you know, so the impact on your community, you can find out more information about that. How you want to respond, you know, responding to the census, you could do it online, you could do it by phone, you could do it by mail, and you can find out more information about all those things here with the phone numbers that Russell was showing, all that type of thing. And what's one kind of interesting thing that Russell was talking about here under the Get the Facts section is the response rates. So you can see updated response rates from the Census Bureau in your area. You can find them easily here. So once again, I'm just at 2020census.gov. Under Get the Facts, I'm going to click on response rates. And then once this site comes up, what it allows you to do is to pick the area anywhere in the United States if you want to see information about how the response rates have been in that particular area. So my machine's running a little slow. It's going to pop up here in a minute, I'm sure. There's a video that kind of shows you how it works, and then other information on it here. Go back up. So hopefully when this comes up in a second, we'll be able to see what we're doing here. And this isn't the census site. This is my computer is being tested to its abilities. But here basically is here, 2020 census rates. And you can see the national rates at 59% as of yesterday, or the 12th actually here. And then you could look at all the different states. You can click on any state. You can drill down over here on the side. If you click the state, and we scroll down to New York, we can get the New York information and see what the rate is. So it's lower than the national rate. If you want to look at a particular city, there's options for cities down here. There's options for counties. So if we click on county here, we can drill down and take a look at Erie County eventually here. You can see. Right, so if I select county here and I scroll down to Erie, we can get the Erie information. And then beyond that, you can scroll down, you could actually see, so Erie's at 64%. You could actually scroll down and see cities and census tracts and all that type of thing. So once again, that's easily found. You just go to census.gov, and then you can go ahead, 2020 census.gov, and then you can go ahead and find it that way. What I'm going to do here is look at some of the chats here, chat questions, and see what I can see if there's any questions out there. Anybody have a question for Russell? I'll start with talking about the enumerators, the people that are going to go out. With the COVID-19, how is that going to affect the census taking? What safety measures are they going to take?
Yes, so the enumeration, that's all on hold for now. And so that's going to be rolled out as these openings occur and we hit a point where it's determined by the CDC and the federal government that we can be out in the streets again doing all that. And then once that occurs, we don't have the full set yet exactly how that's going to happen. But the plan includes, you know, each of these enumerators is going to have all of the PPE, you know, so they're going to have gloves and masks and sanitation, and you know they'll be, you know, taking care of, you know, all of the precautions necessary in order to do that. But none of this is going to happen until there's clearance within that community. So just as, you know, the opening is being phased, you know, in these different regions in New York State, the census has all these regional offices and will be coordinating with not only what the federal guidelines are, but what the guidelines are community by community, and ensure that we're complying with that as well.
Here's another one here. This is from Joy. How is Erie County doing in terms of completion rates? Are the census going to continue to run TV and commercial ads to encourage census taking?
Yes, yes. So they're running, you know, ultimately what amounts to a little more ads than originally intended, a little more, and then a little longer frequency. And like I said, they're really bolstering their social media presence and social media strategy in order to promote that. As a county, Erie County is doing very well. There are pockets within the community where the response rates are low, and again, you know, we have that information by census tract. We also know, you know, we had those predictor scores. I was showing Rome before. We had those predictor scores. We also have, the difference between what is actual and what was predicted. So, there may be, parts of the community that have what you would think is a good response rate at like 55%, but they were actually projected to be at 75% at this point in time. So that's another community that we actually have to strategize around getting to, because, and in some cases, that's the low-hanging fruit. It should be easier for us to get to them right now while we're still in this virtual pattern, as opposed to saving that when we have to get enumerators out. So hopefully we can clear up some of those before all of this happens too. But in general, Western New York, relative to the state and the nation, is in pretty good shape with its response rates. But as you drill down, there's certain communities, certain towns that are lagging a bit, but nothing horrible. The response rates are pretty well on a good track.
Okay, good. That's good to hear. If anybody else has any questions, send them via chat. If you'd rather, you could raise your hand. I could unmute you if you have a multifaceted question you want to ask. What I'll ask Russell is, I know that everybody by now, if they haven't responded to the census, should have got a paper questionnaire.
Yes.
If they lost their paper questionnaire, don't have the paper questionnaire, is there a way that they can go ahead and get another one?
Yes, they can. They can go online to the census page and request it. Their access to the internet is still possible as well. They can also phone in and respond by phone if they would like. So they could request another paper questionnaire, but they could follow the other channels and just respond by phone or by internet at this stage as well.
Yeah, we have another question here. So how long has the census been extended to for people to respond?
Officially, it has not been extended yet.
Okay.
Officially, the deadline still remains July 31st. The request is for a 3-month extension. The expectation is that extension will happen. Officially, that has not occurred yet. So technically, the official word is still July 31st. But the expectation is that there will be a 3-month extension. And then that could also be revisited too. If, the openings don't proceed as hoped or as expected, then we'll revisit that at that time as well. But the request has been submitted to Congress. We're just waiting for Congress to act on the 3-month extension.
And if a person has questions about the census, they can call the 1-800 number. And then yes, can they ask questions, and as they're asking questions, just take the census while they're on the phone there with them?
Not to that 1-800. There's 2 different numbers. So there's the information number, and then there's the actual taking of the census. And so they can assist them in getting to that. But if you call for questions, it's not like you're speaking to the same person that takes the questionnaire. There's a lot of sensitivity around the information protection. And so people who are assisting with the questionnaire or doing the surveys for individuals have a very specialized training that not everyone at the U.S. Census Bureau has received. So if you're looking for information, that person is trained for a specific task. But if you're looking to actually do, the census, that's a very specific issue that very specific skill set needs to deal with.
I've got another question here from the chat. So based on or compared to 2010, has the overall census completion at this point been up because of the online?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we are actually. Last I saw from a couple weeks ago, we were a little ahead of where we were at that point, but now it's getting difficult. It's getting to a stage now where it's apples and oranges and you can't make a fair comparison, because we're getting to the point where we would have had enumerators in the streets and people knocking on door to bolster rates in the neighborhoods where we know we needed to go. So because of the situation, we were originally trending a little better, but now it's difficult to make that comparison because now we're really feeling the difference between the techniques that we were able to use in the past and what's available currently.
Great. Any other questions? Last chance here for chat questions. Okay, I don't see anything coming up, Russell. So I want to say thank you, and thank you to Russell. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. This is being recorded, so we will post that on the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library, a link to it on the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library's social media in the next few days. But I want to thank everybody for joining us, and please take care. Thank you.